I'm with you on that. Please stand and join us as Michaela leads us in this evening's pledge. You can go on up to the mic.
I pledge allegiance to of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Great job, Michaela. Thank you. Let it be reflected that all board members were present. So our first order of business tonight is recognitions, which is some of the funnest part of what we do. And I'd like to ask Coach AD Chris Ross to come up and recognize our track and field.
Coach Kelly, Coach Littlefield, please come up here. While they're making their way up here, I'm going to let them brag on their kids, so I get to brag on them a little bit. We're going to be celebrating our track athletes. Track starts mid-February. That's not when they start. They never really stop. If you want to be excellent in what these two do, then there's really no off season. You know, and what we've seen in cross country and in track, there's a level of excellence there that I think that we all want in everything that we do at Lovejoy. You know, we talk about having a standard academically, athletically, socially. These two set the bar really high for all of us. And, you know, we're celebrating these kids, but we celebrate you too as well. Thank you for what you do.
Hello, kids, you want to go ahead and come on up? I am Carly Littlefield, and I'm the head girls track and field coach. I want to thank you all for having us and for recognizing these kids. This is an awesome honor. We appreciate the board and the admin and Coach Ross, Coach Puckett. Thank you all for having us. We appreciate it. All right, I'm going to brag on them as a group, but also individually. So Bella Landrum, first right here. Bella is a sophomore, and the special thing about all four of these girls is, sorry, I'm for some reason a little emotional. I don't know if it's because it's weird. I'm not usually an emotional person, but they are so versatile in what they can run and in what they can do. They all run cross country, and they all made it to the state track meet in the 4x4, which is basically a sprint. So that tells you how amazing they are. What is wrong with me? Sorry. I'm telling you, this is usually Logan. You guys know that. Wow. But Bella qualified in the mile relay. They were district champion in the mile relay, area champion, regional runner-up, and then 5th at state. So that's the whole team. Chloe, where are you? Chloe, oh, and then Bella, she also runs the 400 for us, and then any relay. She can run the 4x1, the 4x2, 800, 400, 200, 100, wherever we need her to run. Chloe is another one that can run whatever you need her to run. This year, Chloe she's also a sophomore, and she was a huge surprise and just came along, and we didn't know who that 4th person was going to be, and she just stepped in and did amazing. And so Chloe was on that relay. That was district champion, area champion, regional runner-up, and 5th in the state. And I'll give these to you in a minute. Amy Moorfield, also a sophomore. Amy has had, as a sophomore, has already been unbelievable and she is a nationally recognized runner in both cross country and in track. Amy qualified in the 2-mile and the mile relay, which is, there's a big difference there. And Amy has been 2-time state qualifier in cross country. Amy can run, again, anything, 100, 200, 300, probably could hurdle, could do whatever you need her to do. Amy was district champion in the 2-mile. And sorry, I don't know. And I know, I don't know if it's because my daughter, I don't know, you guys are just emotional. And at banquets, I'm not even this emotional, but just had an amazing season. She was injured for a month, came off that injury, came back, made it to state in the 2-mile, was 7th in the 2-mile at state, and then 5th at state in the mile relay. Okay, Kaylee. So as you know, Kaylee is my daughter. Kaylee was she's a freshman. She was district champion in the 800 in the mile, area champion in the 800 in the mile, regional champion in the 800, third at regional in the mile. State, let's see, she was 6th at state in the mile, state champion in the 800, and then my relay 5th. So super proud of these girls, hardworking, and you're going to see a lot more from them in the future.
Well, I'm Coach Kelly, and I thank everybody for allowing us to recognize these athletes tonight. I'm the boys track and cross country coach here at Lovejoy. I'm here to recognize Tate Barr. He was our one boy qualifier this year for the state track and field meet. Tate, he was our district champion in the 3200 and the 1600. He was the area meet champion in the 3200 and the regional champion in the 3200. He placed second in area and second in region in the 1600. And at the state meet, he placed 9th overall in the 3200 and 7th overall in the 1600. Tate was our team MVP this year for boys track and field. He finishes his junior year here with the second fastest 1600 meter time in our school history, of 4:23. And as many of you know, our distance program and cross-country program here at Lovejoy is one of the best in the state of Texas. And so I think that says a lot about where he finished up. You're 1 second faster than I ever ran in the 1600. My PR was 4:24, so he got me beat already. And then he also finishes 5th overall in our all-time list for the 3200 with the time of 9:37. So can't say enough about Tate and these ladies that are up here. I know I shared at our banquet that Tate does all the little things right, and to be a champion, to strive for excellence in everything you do, you have to do all the little details right. And he puts in all the work before practice and after practice at home. And so just really, really proud of you, Tate, and congratulations, everybody.
Now, Coach Littlefield, I couldn't help but hear you say these girls can run anything. Can they run bases? We have a little game going on, so we might need some help.
Well, Tate, I'll tell you, you may have Coach by 1 second, but you've got me by like 2 minutes ever on the mile time. Well, this evening, my name is Chris Mayfield, and I'm the principal of Lovejoy High School, and I get the great opportunity tonight to represent, or to recognize, I should say, some of our anglers. So if you guys, our fishing team, if you guys will come on and line up right here on this black line, I'll get to talk about you guys for just a second. Now, I know that fishing probably sounds like, man, that's great, that's awesome, it's relaxing. But the truth is, these guys get up early in the cold, in the rain, in the everything, and spend all day out on the lake. And I know that sounds like, for me, I'm thinking that would be great. But the reality is, it's a sacrifice. because it's not always 80 degrees and awesome out there, but these guys stay after it. If you ever get an opportunity to go to a tournament or see the weigh-in, I got to do that this year. It is quite a spectacle, to be honest. But let me tell you a little bit about this crew and why we're recognizing them tonight. The state fishing tournament was held at Lake Texoma, May 15th and 16th. Approximately 135 schools and 270 boats participated in the two-day event. Ben Burns and Aiden Abramson finished second place in the tournament, and Connor Dunn and Ian Nash finished 12th place, earning prizes and scholarships. The top three Lovejoy finishers were Ben Burns and Aiden Abramson, that team, the team of Connor Dunn, Ian Nash, and the team of Max and Wanaboo and Will Branham. Mason Muller, Cheney Kelly, that team, and Isaac Leonard and the Cole Miller team weighed in fish both days for a successful tournament, and these finishes put Lovejoy in third place overall in the state tournament. So congratulations, guys. So again, recognizing them here, and guys, if you'll come take your certificate and come right out there. Ben Burns, top three finisher, second place, third place overall. Congratulations. Aiden Abramson, top three finisher, second place, third place overall. Congratulations. Team of Connor Dunn, top three finisher, 12th place, third place overall. Congratulations. Ian Nash, top three finisher, 12th place, third place overall. Max and Wanaboo, top three finisher, third place overall. Let's see, Will is not here. Mason Muller, third place overall. Congratulations. Cheney Kelly, third place overall. Isaac Leonard, third place overall. And Cole Miller, third place overall. Congratulations.
Great job, guys. Our next item on the agenda tonight is public comments related to non-agenda items. So I just want to step through the rules for that. So we'll limit you to 3 minutes of time to speak. Persons will not be allowed to allocate their time to others. No vote will be taken, and we won't interact with you on your public comment. No concerns or complaints to any employee of the Lovejoy ISD may be discussed. Board will not respond to you or interact with you. Complaints and concerns for which other resolution channels are provided shall be directed through those channels. Disruptions are not going to be tolerated. Stop at the end of 3 minutes as we request, and honor that, please. If at least one morning's offer, we'll give you one warning, and if we have to warn you again, you'll be removed from the building. So non-agenda items. Do we have any non-agenda items tonight?
No, sir, there are no public comments related to non-agenda items.
Perfect. Our next item on the agenda tonight is public comments related to agenda items. Same rules apply. Do we have any?
Yes, sir, we have two.
Perfect.
The first is Julie McLaughlin.
How are y'all today? I almost sang to you last time. I'm not going to do that this time. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. My name is Julie McLaughlin. I have 2 children in the district. First, I wanted to say thank you to the board for the additional communication and invitations regarding the board meetings. That has been very helpful. I'd like to comment tonight on the budget process and overall financial transparency. To help explain my questions. In my professional life, I am the Senior Vice President of Finance for a Fortune 500 company. I am on the board and the finance committee of a local nonprofit that's about the size of Lovejoy ISD, and I'm a certified public accountant in the state of Texas. Understanding that public companies differ from school districts, I would still have the following questions. Last week, the board voted on a bond package of improvements to our athletic facilities. I wanted to say up front that I agree with the vote. I think it was a good call. That said, we discussed the upgrade spending under the overall assumption that it was needed to lower the maintenance cost in our M&O budget. It was approved essentially as part of the M&O budget cycle and not really as part of its own comprehensive review of the state of our assets, the overall plan for capital improvements, and the other projects that would come up next in our improvement pipeline. So the discussions appear out of sequence from my perspective. During the May 10th meeting, I was actually in New York presenting to our board on our budget and also talking about capital improvements at the same time. My ask of the board and of the administration team is a comprehensive review of our INS funds, just like we have done for M&O, a review of the overall state of our assets, including all of our buildings and our land, and a review of the pipeline of how those funds are expected to be used over the next 5 years. I would like to see this information presented to the board at a future meeting and that the board would ask questions about this information in a public forum. Second, I know that we have spent numerous meetings so far, 10, 11, 12, going over the budget assumptions that we needed to nail down this current budget. To date, I don't know that I've seen how all of these assumptions translate into a full draft budget P&L. If it is not already the plan for tonight, which I hope it is, my request for the board and the administration team is that when the budget is put forth for board approval at the June meeting, that there will be a P&L, a balance sheet, and a cash flow statement, or whatever the equivalent statement is for a school board meeting, in front of each trustee. And that the board members will ask clarifying questions in a public forum. My hope would be to see a P&L that has detailed categories, so not just revenue, but how much is state incoming funds, how much is federal, how much is rental income from our facilities, how much is pay-to-play fees, how much is bus fees. Given the oddity of the 2020 year, I would like to see the budget proposal P&L presented in a 3-year comparison. I also think it would be useful to see the P&L in a monthly view, along with the associated fund balance by month, given the extreme focus on our cash position of late. At the April 12th town hall, Mr. Collins, you noted that it is the administration's job to manage the district. And it is
Julie,
the,
thank you so
oh,
much.
excuse me,
Your
I'll
time
email.
has ended.
Thank
you. Our next public comment is from Cynthia Brugge.
Good evening. First of all, I went to the softball game the other night and they were awesome. And I hope y'all saw my clip on Facebook. I got the last 6 minutes on and it was amazing. I missed the games this past week because I couldn't figure out when they were, but I wish them luck and I hope I get to see another one, maybe a state competition. One of the things I wanted to say is that I know that Coach Puckett has retired and I would like to nominate him for us to name the softball field after him, call it Puckett Stadium. So if you guys would be inclined to do that, I would love that. The next thing is I have an idea for us using, now I can't think of the word, a shuttle for back and forth from Lovejoy parking lot to the high school for a football band, you know, like the early six o'clock meets, they have to be there every morning at 6. And for us to consider something like that. Mr. Womack actually made me think of that because he said something about a shuttle when we were talking about public education, the transportation issue. And a lot of times I think parents could just run them up, you know, to the school and they could hop on a shuttle and we could shuttle them back and forth to the elementary school. And I would recommend that you let us put together a small citizen group to possibly just review those options and let us help you with that. I think that'd be a really cool thing to explore. And it would be uplifting because it would address some of the transportation issues we're having and also the concerns we have about air quality and pollution. And then on the serious note, I have been racking my brain for the last 2 weeks, ever since we were told that we're going to have the same tax rate proposed to us that we had last time. And having been on council, we went to the effective tax rate 3 years ago. And we have been able to keep our tax rate lower. And I know y'all have considerations, but I want us to consider this. We got no COVID money. We don't get any rapid growth money. I'm trying to figure out why we would keep sending more money. Our tax base has gone up. The adjusted value in 2021 was $2,524,952,000. In comparison to last year, it was $2,385,404,000. That was an increase of $139 million. including the new improvements. Our income that we're going to send to the state is $2,166,000 over what it would be last year. I do not understand why, and I really need some explanation of why we can't lower the tax rate. The debt rate as well. I don't understand why the values went up. And as far as I know, we have not changed our debt service, but we have the same tax rate on our debt service that we did last year. And I would have anticipated at least a 0.2% difference in the tax rate on the debt service. So, we're talking about a new revenue rate of 1.47. And so I would like a presentation on that.
Cynthia,
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you.
Thank you for those public comments. Next up, we are super excited tonight to name our lone finalist for our Lovejoy Superintendent. I wanted to start out just to recap a little bit of the process that we've gone through so you all can understand where we came from and how we got here. So bear with me just a minute. We worked with a third party, JG Consulting, who is in the business of conducting professional searches for school districts, specifically for superintendents. We conducted a search based on criteria that we developed and collaborated on with the board, the staff, and the community. We vetted those candidates based on the application process and the criteria, which yielded 53 applicants representing 6 states. Our process then narrowed that pool of candidates to 6 qualified applicants. From there, we conducted face-to-face interviews over a 2-day period. After that, we deliberated and narrowed that candidate pool to 3. From that time, we then brought those candidates and their spouses or significant others back to conduct face-to-face interviews again. From that, we as a board deliberated those 3 candidates in detail, vetting them against the criteria we had established, balanced with the needs of our district and the community. Unanimously, 1 candidate stood out during that process, and that candidate is Ms. Katie Cordell. Katie brings to our Lovejoy family the perspective of an administrator, a leader, and a parent. Katie exceeds all the criteria and requirements established through our processes by both the board, the staff, and the community. Ms. Cordell is a leader in all regards and a great communicator. Ms. Cordell is committed to one standard, excellence. Ms. Cordell is willing to run towards our biggest challenges, or as I like to say, she's willing to run towards the fire. With that said, I would entertain a motion from the board.
I move we approve Katie Cordell to be our lone finalist and eventually our superintendent.
Second.
I also second.
I have a motion and I just need 1 second.
Sorry.
I have a motion in 2 seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We have our lone finalist. So there's going to be adequate time for us to game plan and to introduce Ms. Cordell to the district, to include all stakeholders. For now, I want to take a moment and introduce our newest members of the Lovejoy family, the Cordell family, to the district. Katie and her husband, Jeff, are parents to two 8-year-old twins, Jacob and Claire. Jacob and Claire just finished the 2nd grade and will be entering the 3rd grade here in Lovejoy ISD. Welcome. In August. Claire loves art and almost always has a pencil in her hand. Jacob has passion for animatronics and history. Jeff is an electrical engineer and program manager at Texas Instruments, where he has worked for the last 20 years. Katie and Jeff met in college after Jeff served 5 years in the United States Marine Corps. They have been married for 22 years. The Cordell family loves spending time in the great outdoors. They especially enjoy snow skiing, with you on that one, hiking with their dog Barnaby, snorkeling and swimming. And it's a great pleasure that we welcome Katie, Jeff, Claire, and Jacob to our Lovejoy family. So Katie and family, as you know, these board meetings can run long. We'd love to get a picture with you all in the board. And if you all need to take off to take care of those kiddos, then as you see fit, please do so. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Give them one more round of applause. Our next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like pulled for further comment or review? If not, I'll need a motion. So moved. So moved. Second. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Sorry, it's hard to know who said that with the mask on. Motion by Chad Collins, second by Jason James. Is that correct? Perfect. Thank you. All right, next up, Ms. Shay Adams, our Chief Financial Officer, to give us an update on our budget.
Putting some fresh new numbers in the presentation and had trouble saving it, so they're pulling it up. Before I pull that up, I'll go ahead and get started though. There we are. That was quick. Just a brief update on the legislative outlook right now. There's a few amendments that have been introduced that I wanted to share with you. You know, we're winding down to the end of the regular session. And so really, especially school finance are sitting on the Senate side right now. And so a few amendments that I just wanted to share with you. There's been an amendment filed by Taylor, who is the author of the Senate finance bill, a school finance bill, that would modify the fast growth weights. And while that probably will not have an impact on us this year or the coming year, it adjusts the fast growth relative to the level of enrollment growth in districts. And so it just makes some modifications to that. But more importantly is the amendment filed by Hughes, which would modify the fast growth allotment to include hold harmless. This one has a caveat that could impact us because it has a longer look back period and has a hold harmless in it that includes the funds that we received for fast growth in 1920. And as you'll recall, we received $1 million in 1920. And so that one could have an impact on us. And so we've definitely offered our support for that bill. And amendment number 7 by Taylor, this one is substantial. It is really being recognized, at least around the Capitol, as an effort to fund those districts who did not receive ESSER 3. I know it's not a newsflash to this audience or this board that we did not receive ESSER 3 funds. And the way that they are using those federal funds as an allotment is that it would provide $208.35 per student to districts, and then you have to offset that by the ESSER 3 funds that you received. So if you received 0, there is no offset to that. In addition, you would receive 1,290, I believe, funds, and those are funds that we hope not to get. Those are set aside for students who were not successful on their state assessment test. And so should we have any of those, then there will be funding for that if this amendment passed as well. But this amendment could be up to $850,000 for the district. So that is an important one. Also included in the Amendment 7 by Taylor, it has a provision to provide reimbursement of technology costs that districts incurred up through February the 28th. And again, that would be substantial money for us, about $650,000 that we had already reported to the agency. And then moving on, still in the Amendment 7, it was a big one. And this is just FYI more than anything, and it's good news that they're recognizing and directing TEA to require adjustments to the first reporting due to the impact of COVID. So some of the first indicators that we talk about each year are going to be difficult for most districts to meet because of the impact of COVID. And so there's some adjustments. There's not really a lot of specificity around that right now. I'll share that as I learn more. Also an amendment by Taylor is the reimbursement to school districts for Winter Storm Uri for out-of-pocket costs that we may have incurred. For us, that was around $158,000. Now, you'll recall that there's a lot of construction going on around the district, and it's probably going to be more in excess of $1 million, but our insurance covered that. And so this is more out-of-pocket for the excess electricity costs and some of the non-reimbursed costs and the deductibles that we would have. Taylor also filed Amendment 17. That would allow funding of remote instruction. There are a lot of caveats around that and Amendments 22 and 23 by West that allow for some off-campus electronic instruction to be funded only to a maximum of 10% of the student body, and the courses have to be offered on campus. So it can't be a way that you're going to offer additional courses. And then further, you would have to have staff to do that. So you've got offsetting expenditures for those as well. So there's an inefficiency there, but it's still good news for the districts that want to move forward and offer those. Those are just kind of some of the most prevalent and applicable amendments that are happening right now at the Capitol. So wanted to share that with you. Jason?
One question, there's a lot of press right now on this Tim Tebow homeschooling for athletics bill. Have you looked into that, if there's any economic or budget impact for us to think
I have
about?
not studied that bill specifically. I've read some of the buzz around that, but I have not studied that bill as it relates to us specifically. So I'll try to get more information on that.
Thank you.
Shay, before you move on, is the prohibition of tuition still in
Thank you
the
for bringing that up. Yes.
7th Amendment?
Yes. So there is actually, it's kind of a double negative, and I'm trying to remember the number. I have it here. There is an amendment to repeal the repeal of the parent-paid district's ability to charge tuition to transfer students, and it restores the tuition allotment. That's Amendment 2 by Campbell. And where the confusion has been on that all along, and we've had a lot of public comments around that and frustration because there's been differing opinions on whether it was included or not included. We even had that with some of the staff at the Capitol, is there are two different pieces to tuition, the ability to charge tuition. You can charge tuition from another district to provide services that that district is not providing or is paying you to provide, in the same way that we used to pay Allen. When I first got here, we only had K-6. And so we paid Allen to educate our secondary students. That was a district paid tuition. That is the one that they are still trying to repeal the repeal for. The parent paid tuition as of right now is still going to be repealed. and the ability that you would have to do that would be lost, which is why we early on indicated that to the board and why you made the decision that you did to do transfers at a limited number without tuition, because otherwise it would have a detrimental effect on the district. So you made a wise decision there. We still don't know what the final will pass, because we've had the repeal that was originally in there, then we had a repealing the repeal, and then now this amendment repeals the repeal to the repeal. So I just sent to the staff and said, is there still a repeal of parent paid tuition? And I got back an LOL, yes, it is still being repealed. So thank you for reminding me to bring that up. And then this is a familiar screen that you've seen and met many times over the last several months on the 21-22 budget development. And so we're really down to 2 meetings unless the board sees it fit to set another meeting. The workshop tonight is really preparing you for those last 2 items in the recommendation to balance this budget with additional revenue and with cut expenditures. They're really about half and half. If you look at the totals on that, we're at about half. We had a $6 million deficit. If we kept all of the same expenditures, all the same buildings, the inefficiencies that we had, we cut about $3 million of expenditures, and then we have inserted the ability to raise another $3 million in revenue. And we will go through that specifically on June the 14th when we finalize and have our public hearing. The board, of course, has gone through those one by one, and we'll review them really quickly, but I have more detail on that later. This is, again, a refresher from last month's meeting, or last time we met. I guess it was still in the same month, on the 10th, that we had received our preliminary estimate, our certified estimate of property values for the 21-22 fiscal year. And so we've grown about 5% based on that, on our gross certified value. Interestingly, the home value has grown about 8%. The average home value has gone up higher than the total increase, and there are a lot of different reasons and caveats for that. We have a strong history of a really good preliminary certified value from Collin County. Bo Daffin and his team do a tremendous job in giving us those early estimates that we have to then use to go forward and adopt a budget in June. The certified values will come to us on July the 25th. They'll go to the Texas Education Agency, and the agency will actually assign our maintenance and operation rate. That is not something that we have the ability to do. However, you still have to adopt it. So there's some really strange caveats, especially for school districts. And if you look in the Truth in Taxation guides, you'll specifically see the difference between cities and school districts. And so you will have that assignment from TEA. You won't adopt a tax rate in June as you used to before House Bill 3. You'll adopt that tax rate in August. You'll get the assignment from TEA for your compressed tax rate, and that is actually issued after they get all of the state's taxable values, because there's a 2% band that they try to keep that within. And it's really a no new revenue, as one of our speakers said earlier, that applies to the maintenance and operations side of the House. And so these certified preliminary estimates are what we use in order to move forward with our required truth in taxation compliance. And so that moves over from where we received these values on the previous slide from the Collin County Appraisal District, or we call them CAD. That moves over to our calculation with the Collin County Tax Office and Ken Mon's office, and they have to certify our calculations. They actually perform a lot of the calculations and issue the notice that we put into the paper. That will be in the paper on May the 27th. That notice is really giving our public notice that we will have a hearing on June the 14th, as we have every year on whatever date you set it. You set that as June 14th, the last meeting that we have. And at that meeting, we always go through the detail by function, and we tell how much is in each function, how much is in payroll of that function, how much is in the contracted services. So really that line item detail. The board's responsibility is to adopt a budget by function. And so that is what you do that night after much discussion and explanation. I'm happy to share. We've talked about cash flow already. I'm happy to share our cash flow statement. And we'll recap our fund balance. Our fund balance, really the biggest factor in that is when you adopt a budget, what impact that budget will have on fund balance. at the end of the year because we're not funded evenly throughout the year. And that's why our cash flow and our fund balance are so integrated and so important that they play within one another, because we get two big payments from the state, which don't happen until September and October of the year. We collect taxes December through February essentially, and then just tricklings of delinquent taxes and so forth the rest of the year. But we have a $3 million payroll every month, and our teachers like to get paid every month. Our employees are paid every month. And so fund balance plays a critical role in making those payments. So we'll review more of that. The board had already requested that we have some extra information on June the 14th that we typically do have. I know we do have some new board members as well, and so we'll make sure and flesh that out, not only for the board, but for the community. I will be sending you, and I'll also remember that the maintenance and operation fund, the general fund that we have talked so much about in the operations of the day-to-day, that has a separate tax rate that this current year is $1.547. And we published at $1.547 based on the advice that we get from TEA, because you won't adopt that rate until August, not in June. But if they assign a rate that is less than $1.547, you do not have to go back through that process, republish, and have another hearing. I really fully anticipate, based on my own calculations and historical data, that your tax rate on the M&O side will be more like $1.328, anywhere between there and $1.383. But that final certified taxable value for us and as a whole for the state will really drive that. And so I have developed the budget based on the $1.328, not on the $5.47. To be more conservative. The publication has a line in it that always confuses really everyone that reads it, including the people that have to prepare it at the tax office, but it follows the truth in taxation law. And so there is a line item in it that says the rate to maintain the same level, and it has these really high numbers, like where $5.47 would have to be $1.28. And it's driven even further out of whack by the fact that there's no new revenue. So I'll send you some more notes that we will also share in the June 14th budget hearing. So I just like to provide that to the board before it comes out in the paper, and that will happen on the 27th. This is an update. We've used the same slide now 3 or 4 meetings in a row, just to give you an indication of what we had originally budgeted for enrollment, which was at that low growth demography. And we adjusted that down to, relative to the 2021, because we're tracking about 4% below that low growth. And then along the way in February, we had a re-enrollment of 45 students that the board chose to go ahead and include in that in our budget estimate. And then we also increased what we had originally budgeted for 300 transfers. We at 265, we increased that to 300. So let me say that again. We originally budgeted for 265. We increased that to 300. So it'll be a total student enrollment, not average daily attendance, but enrollment of 4374. That's what you see on the left side there. And then on the right side is where I've tried to give you updates along the way. We have pre-registered in our Power School system, which parents are familiar with. We have 4,082 students. And so you can see there the delta and how low our enrollment has become. But we also have packets that have been picked up or are in progress that are not included in that number of 70 students. We have new Lovejoy Scholar applications of 171, which would bring our enrollment to date to 4323 if, and I said this last time and the time before, I'm going to say it again, if everyone enrolled in Power School continues to be enrolled and we have no withdrawals over the summer, if every one of those applications that were picked up are completed, those packets are completed, and if every one of those applications for new transfer are approved. Those 3 things are not going to happen. This is just a dipstick for you to understand that if all of those things were to happen, then we're about 51 students sitting here today on May 24th from the total estimate that we had originally had. And we have no way to know how many of those students won't return a packet, how many won't be approved at this point, how many will withdraw. And so rather than give you broad stroke guesses, I'd rather give you the solid numbers that we do have data on, that we've hand touched each one of those. Okay. Please feel free to stop me if you have questions. The next slide is a quick review just in the format that we've used all along through this process because it took multiple layers, as you are well aware, to reach nearly $6 million in the deficit. So each of those decisions as they were made, we've line itemed those in the estimate of either revenue that would bring in or a savings because it would be a cut in cost. And so you can see there from limited enrollment all the way down through the donations that we received through One Heart, One Lovejoy, reduction of 16% of the positions in the administration building, some efficiencies that we have through scheduling and changes in the way that we deliver library support. And then, of course, the reconfiguration of the K-4 grade levels and the savings there. The capital project, which was really, that was a byproduct of a decision that you were making on the bond side that we did include here for water, electricity, other savings that we won't have by not operating 3 campuses. That I know that didn't drive your decision, but it was a byproduct of that. So that brings us decisions made to 4.8 million. And then the 2 that were really pending from that original recommendation are on the agenda for you to discuss tonight. And that is the safety staff, the security, staffing and structure, and then the transportation fee, expanding that for non-special education for our regular riders, expanding that to all paying a fee. So just, recapping that and carrying that same number forward to the next, so it's on the same slide for you, that $5.4 million left, $518,000 left for us to reach that, that goal number of $5.9 million. And in order to do that, I see that I made changes up there. I don't think I subtotaled that right. So there might be an error up there that I didn't subtotal. I told you I changed some numbers right before I came up here. The numbers are right, but the total budget adjustments would bring us to the 5.921 that we talked about all along. And so if we take the security, staffing, and structure from the original 350,000 that would have reduced our 7 marshals to 3 and really had that shared model, that would have been $190,000 and for us to have 5 marshals. So again, instead of the 7 to 3, this would go 7 to 5. And so the savings would be $190,000 for the restructure. That would put 1 marshal on each campus. And then we have received from our very generous community and parents, we have received donations from our through our foundation to a security fund of about $55,000 and then a matching, not literally matching like grants, but just an equivalent number that our Lovejoy Scholar parents have made donations. Instead of having to pay tuition, they've directed money to the foundation. And so our recommendation is that you apply that toward the security savings. And then we again have estimated all along that we would have $150,000 in additional revenue for the fee for all on the transportation. Remember that $75,000 that were collected this year is already included in our estimate of revenue for next year of repeating that. So this is just the new revenue portion of that transportation piece. And so that would leave around $48,000 for us to reach that balancing piece. And so I know that the board may want to have some discussion about that. We have some other agenda items. And so just as a reminder before we move to those, that we will meet again. The publication will come out on the 27th. I keep wanting to say March, but it's actually May. And then we will have our public hearing on June the 14th, where you will discuss more about the budget, have more detailed line item type information, and that you will ultimately adopt the 21-22 general fund budget, debt service budget, and because we are on the free and reduced program at our student nutrition, we also adopt that. I know that you had a comment earlier, and just to address that a little bit now before we move into the public hearing on June the 14th, the 50-cent debt service rate that was set years ago and that we have maintained has been so that we have pockets where we're paying off or refunding pieces of our portfolio to still then issue bonds that have been approved by the voters, and that's the only way that we can issue bonds, and the only way that we can charge 50 cents is if we have debt for that or are issuing debt for that. And so if we were not incurring new debt and we had completely flushed out the bond program, then we would likely see a reduction there. But all along there had been a plan by the board and a debt management plan that 50 cents would support building out the bond projects that were approved by the voters. And so the 50 cents that you see there for the debt service, it includes refunding of bonds that you approved back in February, and then we'll be doing those this fall. And then we have already sold a portion of the bonds to pay for the projects that you approved at the last meeting, but we'll need to issue another around $3 million in order to complete those projects. That will still leave some of the money from the bond fund, and we'll cover all that as well during the debt service portion of that June 14th meeting.
So did I hear a little bit of good news in there? Thank you to our community and our Education Foundation for the work and generosity that translated into that additional funding component to help out with our security program. That's amazing.
And then I know you have other agenda items. Dr. Womack, do you just want to join me and talk through those?
Thank you, Shay. So our next agenda item is our security program. We'll just carry straight forward with that.
Yeah, I want to echo what Mr. Owen said about our Foundation for Lovejoy Schools and for partnering with the district to raise funds, not only for the security piece, but also the teacher grants that we have, as well as our parents that live outside the district that are donating in lieu of paying tuition. Their total amount was just under 60,000 that they've given so far. So that's pretty good movement in those areas. So tonight, one of the items that you have here in front of you, or the item that we're on at this point, is providing safety and security for our campuses. As you know, from our budget planning workshops, we've had several over the last about 8 months that you've been working on portions of the budget that the administration had put together an option to lower our total expenditures and specifically within the safety and security realm. And that plan was to move from an officer at each campus to a shared model that we would share security officers or marshals at each campus. The board directed the administration to go back and to put a security marshal on each campus. And so we've done that. And tonight what we're asking you to do is to take formal action to put a security officer or a marshal on each campus. And that's what this agenda item is all about. Before you do that, though, let me just give you a little bit of an overview, really more for our audience than for the board, because the board knows this information. But our marshals are they go through the training process, over 80 hours of training that they have to do on a two-year basis. Through the same law enforcement agency, TCOL, that a Fairview officer or a Collin County deputy would do. So it's very similar in the quality of the program and the training that they're required to have to become a licensed school marshal. So all of our individual officers do that and are required to as part of their employment with the district. So it's exciting that the board directed the administration to keep that, because that's been a very successful program for the school district in providing more than just a presence on each campus, but really the daily interaction with our students and staff. And it's incredible to hear the stories from our parents and our students about how these men and women have impacted their schooling in a positive manner. And so I know that sometimes they have to do some of the hard stuff when students and our folks attending some of our events aren't acting correctly. But for the most part, that's not a high use of their time. They get a lot of opportunity to positively influence our kids. And so from that perspective, it's exciting to me to see us continue that program. Now, just to be clear, 5 officers would cover Hart, Puster, Sloan Creek, Willow Springs, and the high school. It would not place an officer at this location or the administration building as we go forward. To do that, we would need to add a 6th officer. And if you chose to do that, a 6th one, we would recommend that we maybe co-share that 6th officer with the high school and give us 2 at that campus that would then rotate around back over to this particular location or site. So that is an option that's available, and it's nothing you have to decide on tonight, but it's something that we can continue to look at even into the new budget year that we can add. Today, we only have 5 marshals remaining on staff. And so your action tonight would actually place those 5 back on campuses. We would have to put out the job opportunity or employment opportunity to hire a 6th officer if you so chose to go that direction. Is there any questions about that?
So the cost for that additional officer is about 80?
Yes, sir. The average cost of a marshal is about 80,000. Perfect. Yes, sir. And that includes benefits.
Been other proposals from the community about community member involvement to help with safety and security. Has that been explored in any detail?
So when we originally implemented the Marshall program versus the Guardian program, and the Guardian program is what the community involvement would be, or where you would allow a staff member to possibly carry a firearm. And under the community, the Guardian program, unfortunately, there's no training. It's literally you as a board decide that Dennis Womack can carry a firearm on campus. And so we're not as keen on that idea, not because I wouldn't make a good judgment with my firearm, but it really puts us at risk more so without proper training. All of the folks that we have employed have some law enforcement background, and whether they were a Collin County deputy or a police officer with some other municipality. And that doesn't mean that some of our community members are not, but being an employee of the district makes a big difference, and especially when you think about the risk involved with someone that is potentially in a position to use their weapon. Good question.
That was a big discussion point. When we originally were trying to build the security program, is looking at all the training, because we had a fair number of dads that wanted to sit out in the parking lot with the weapons, and I mean, we had a lot of great suggestions, but as we vetted that became very evident that the Marshall program was probably the strongest and most
Cohesive.
yes,
Like,
and that, yep.
Yeah, cohesive across, having a leader really directing.
And consistency,
Right.
right? And day-to-day consistency. And really it comes back to my earlier comments about knowing that person at a kid level, at the individual level, where they can build those relationships with them. It's another confidant to go to in the event of a need. Whether it's school related or not school related, really it's another adult to have a healthy relationship with kids.
And they have such a keen situational awareness, a favorite word of what they do, that they can really spot and see something's different or kids' behavior. So it's so much more about just protecting them than overseeing the bigger picture of what's happening on the campus.
That's right.
at a
And
real
social,
specific
emotional.
level. Yeah, yeah.
And to Mr. Collins' point, when we first implemented the Marshall program in Lovejoy, part of that decision-making of not doing it by committee, where we had multiple volunteers that would help provide some security on a campus, really using the one individual model where you have that opportunity to build the relationships where and also the training that goes with that, both on the physical and the social emotional health of our students and staff.
So I wanted to add a comment. I think this was the first big thing that happened when I joined the board. So it's kind of one of my favorite things to talk about because I was here from the beginning to now. I remember all of the context around the high school and the reason to have the 2 officers because of all the entrances, exits, and you have double the kids. So if it's possible and we can kind of see how things are going to shake out, I mean, maybe we have more kids enroll and that ends up being another 8,300 per that would make up this extra 80K. I would love to look at exploring that 6th officer. And I think it would be a value add for here. I don't know how many pre-Ks have officers on them, but they are Lovejoy Leopards. They are part of our program. So I think it might be worth exploring if we can find a way to do it. I hate to get this close to the finish line and then not quite offer what we could potentially to all of our leopards. So that's just N of 1, as Chad would say.
I would agree. I think that the desire is to get an officer at each campus for all of our leopards, and would like to see us, as we unpack the finishing touches on this budget, work towards finding a way to ensure that we accomplish that. That's my personal opinion. Certainly like the idea of getting our security officers at our campuses, these 5, and accomplishing that amendment. So any other questions for Dr. Womack around this officer plan that he's proposing that would put 5 marshals in place
Yes, sir.
for each of our campuses, save and accept this final piece here? I think we should at least consider making that movement happen now.
We have the time, which we do. We probably should explore, I mean, the community's been so generous since the last time we met. And, we're able to put back 2 officers. We're really close to adding that 6th, which has been our target the entire time. And I think it's worth tabling or waiting to figure out, in
I think for purposes of securing our officers that we need, I would love to suggest that we pass the 5 and then supplement, put it back on the agenda next meeting and add that 6th, if you all would be amicable to that.
makes sense.
So could I make a motion to approve the 5 today and then revisit adding additional on June 14th? Or do we need to put a date in there for the revisit?
You don't have to put it in your motion. We'll add it to the agenda next
No,
meeting.
really, when we come to you in the budget on the 14th, we'll
You'll have
have that 6th one added, and then we can figure out how to take care of it.
Okay. So I make the motion, we approve the 5.
Motion by Ann,
Second.
second by Amy Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Dr. Womack.
Yeah.
You want to roll right into our next agenda item?
I do. So after our last meeting where the board set our new boundaries.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
I just want to reiterate something that you touched on so that those listening and the audience can understand it. So our transfers who no longer had to pay tuition redirected about $55,000, voluntarily gave us donations towards our programs to go towards security. That is tremendous, and we are grateful for that. So I just want to make sure they hear us say that, and that we make sure the community understands the logistics of what that actually was. So that was tremendous. Sorry about that.
Nope, no worries. So at our last meeting, the board set the boundaries for our 2 elementaries in terms of the attendance. And following that, the administration had committed to doing a survey of our families, especially those that were impacted by the transition between Hart and Puster to do a transportation check-in. So basically, there's nothing in this data that we will hold anyone to. This was more or less an opportunity for the community, especially our parents, to give us feedback about what their intent is if we were starting school tomorrow. What would be their intent for transportation services? This will help us in the next agenda item, or the current agenda item, I guess, and moving into the future for next year. So we had 681 families complete the survey. That's a lot. That's actually more families that completed the survey than we have in average daily riders during this year of COVID. Think about that. More families completed the survey than we currently have in average daily riders.
How is that?
That's because we have such a low ridership right now. Whether it's virtual students choosing not to come back on campus, or whether it's folks that don't want their kid on the bus because they're too close together, whatever the case may be, that just means we had a high participation level on this survey, which is very helpful. On the survey, those families that have just one rider, you can see the number there, it's about 300, just under 300 total. Those families that have two riders are possible riders, I should say. Again, we're about 300, so that represents 600 kids at the two rider level, right? One rider is about 300, two riders is about 600 students, but about 300 families that have that. And then when it goes up to 3 or more riders, we're actually down to just about 100 families that have 3 or more potential riders. The reason why this is important is because we ask a question later about a family cap in terms of the fee level. And so we want to use this data to help with setting a potential family cap opportunity. So moving forward, if you look at that number of, oh, I'm sorry, Mark.
So how many total riders is that poll?
1176.
1176.
Oh, 1,176 total riders.
So
In
we
fact,
had something like 480, something like that.
yeah, so we average around that 550 over the last month. Now, back in November, October, November, we were down on under 500 to around that 480 mark. But as we came back in the spring semester, we actually increased our total number of riders. So if you add up all of these numbers by campus, Mr. Bobo, you get that 1176 out of that. So this is how our respondents were by campus as they identified the number of students that we ride. And it's very similar to what we would have expected in the past, pre-COVID, with our Sloan Creek kiddos typically are the highest ridership, and that's out of those 2 grades. And then our elementary students are typically our second highest. So we run a 2-tier transportation system, and that first tier is our elementary and Sloan Creek students all on the same buses. And so you can see that that's the majority of the students, the vast majority of the students that actually receive or want transportation.
Can you go through the reason why you put the elementary and Sloan Creek together? Some people may not remember why.
Yeah,
those 2 go together.
Yeah, so prior to...
Since they're the highest ridership.
That's right. Prior to Sloan Creek becoming our 5th and 6th grade campus, as Ms. Adams spoke earlier, this building in Hart used to be K-6. And so there had been some historical precedents in place to transport our K-6 together. A lot of our families do not like the older kids, 7th and 8th graders, on the same bus with a kinder or first grader. And I don't necessarily disagree with that if we have the luxury of splitting them out as much as possible. So as we moved from a K-5 campus to a 5-6 and K-4, we kept those 2 groupings together because of the age consistency between them and not trying to put a 7th, 8th grader or a 9th through 12th grader on the same bus with our elementary students is the primary reason. So when you look at the total numbers here, again, it's that 1176, which is a high number of riders, but is really more consistent with the ridership we've seen in years past than what we've seen this particular year. Some of that may be due to the transition between the K-4 campuses, but I think it may even speak to the comfort level of utilizing our transportation services as an option. So one of the questions we asked our survey participants was, how often will your particular rider be on the bus, or will they ride? And the options that we gave was basically, are you going to ride in the mornings and the afternoons? Are you only going to ride in the mornings? Are you only going to ride in the afternoons? Or are you only interested in campus-to-campus shuttles, primarily from Sloan Creek to the 2 elementary campuses? Although we do have some from Willow to the high school that receive that shuttle service that if they want it. So it's not a huge, I just went blank. It's not too far off of the comment of having a large group that wants morning and afternoon. I will tell you, those that signed up for morning, they typically don't ride in the morning. If you look at our buses in the morning, they look fairly empty because we don't have, even today or in the prior years, we don't have a lot of riders in the morning for whatever reason. There's a myriad of reasons. One is, especially at the secondary level, as we all know, we have a high participation rate in our extracurricular activities. And so either though, if there's practice in the morning, obviously they're there before the buses even run. And then we have a lot of kids that just prefer to be dropped off in the mornings a little closer to when the bell rings than early. And that's my nice way of saying being real close to being tardy, but not with mom and dad's bus. So out of that number, the PM only, it's not surprising that 316 riders would only be PM only. That's really more consistent with what we see. If you look at one of our afternoon buses, you'll notice that there's a lot more kids on there than there are in the morning. That's held consistent from years past as well through this past year. And then one that is a little surprising is the number of potential shuttle or campus-to-campus shuttle riders. I expected that number to be a little bit higher for people to take advantage of that. I think that some went ahead and chose like morning, or I'm sorry, both AM and PM routes or afternoon routes until they know what the fee structure is going to be. And they may choose to do shuttle if there's maybe a cost advantage to doing so as an option.
Can I ask a real quick question?
Yes, sir.
On that, do you have it broken down by, so the both AM, PM, you may have mentioned it, maybe I missed it, but what does it break down by age level, grade level, schools? Just curious on that.
Yeah, so at our elementaries, those that are, I say elementary, our K through 6, about 400 kids are the both AM and PM. At the high school, middle school level, it's about 300. So about 100 difference between the two for both AM and PM. On the PM at our elementary or younger age level, it's about 200 students that are on PM only versus at the high school, middle school, it's about 100. So again, about another 100 difference there. And then on the AM only, it was very small, 30 kids at the early grades versus about 30 kids at the secondary grade for morning pieces. And then broken out by campus, Mr. Collins, it's 66 at Hart, 77 at Puster, 68. So we have the data. I just don't have it up on the screen for you. And then we have it broken down all the way through for AM, PM, and both. Any other questions on that one? So then we were polling our parents about, okay, how can we incentivize you to want to utilize our bus services? And one of the questions we asked is, what would be the likelihood that you would choose to pay a fee to ride the bus if there was a reduced fee for only riding, let's say, in the afternoon, since 316 of them wanted to do that. And you can see just over 50% had a high likelihood that they would be willing to pay for that. And some of the comments we got was that I would feel better about paying a smaller or reduced fee than a standard AM and PM fee or full fee. It feels like a better value because I'm only going to use it half the time. And so that's the purpose of the particular question that we were asking is, can we help you with the morning route or help you get your child to school or get your child from school to home if we were to consider a reduced fee for only one of those options. And I think there is a market for that, as 316 potential riders have indicated. Then we asked the question about a potential reduced fee for the campus-to-campus shuttle. It was, again, I predicted that would have been a little bit different, but it was actually lower. 262 riders potentially would have a high likelihood to ride if you offered a lower fee for the shuttle-to-shuttle. Again, that's primarily from Sloan Creek to the two elementary schools and some from Willow to the high school. This next year, if we do campus-to-campus shuttles, we would add Lovejoy Elementary as one of the stops on that shuttle. So we could actually shuttle students from Hart or from Puster or from Sloan Creek here as another option on the shuttle stop. And then we asked the question about what would be your likelihood to pay a fee for transportation if we had a family fee cap. And you can see almost 50% said that they would be willing to pay for bus service if we put a cap in place. And so the very next question was, well, what amount of a cap should we have? And we did that based on the number of riders versus a dollar amount. So if the cap was at a fee equal to 2 riders. So currently, our current fee is $350 per year. It equates to, and I'm rounding up, about $40 a month or about $2 a day to ride the bus. And so if you had 2 riders, that's $700 cap for your family. And about 44% said that that was a reasonable spot to set your family cap at 2. Then it went up from there. About 14% said set it at 3. And then about 26% said it didn't apply to them. Those were probably the one with the single child that was going to potentially ride. So we used all of that data from the very beginning. How many do we have, or would we project that have just 1 rider? How many we're projecting with 2 riders based on the survey data, and then 3 or more? And then how frequent are those riders going to ride? And then taking all of that information into account, setting what the fee structure would look like. And it's very similar to the way that we do it today. We would recommend somewhere around that $350 range. That again comes out to about $40 a day. I'm sorry, thanks, a month. The good thing about per day is, and we have not announced this at all, So this is kind of new information for the community and for the board. Our Director of Food Service, our student nutrition is Matt McCarty. Matt, just wave. Matt has informed me that we will be able to offer free lunches for our K-6 kids this next year, all year. Free lunches, all year. By the USDA and the TDA. So that is something that we actually qualified for in Lovejoy. So it is part of the federal relief for COVID, and so we. Thank you.
Dennis, I got to ask.
But it's great news.
Hold on, what? So we're gonna give free meals?
We're gonna, it's our regular meal service, just like we always provide, and it costs at an elementary level $2.50 to eat lunch in the lunch line. And so for this next year, any kid that wants to eat will eat free.
For lunch.
For lunch.
And I'm
And the
assuming the dollars
streams?
have to be applied that way.
Hold on.
And
The string.
ask that question first, and then I'll ask my
I'm
Okay.
question.
assuming the dollars have to be applied that way.
That's right.
Only
Well,
credit.
it's reimbursement is what we'll get. We get reimbursed. And that's not unlike what we have now. We get reimbursement, but our reimbursement is under like in the cents
Right.
versus the full meal of $2.50. So the strings that are attached to it is the increased reporting, but we're already doing the reporting based on the number of meals served, our participants that come through. So the good news is it's going to increase the amount of reporting we do, but we're already doing a good chunk of that reporting anyway, because we get reimbursement now and have, especially for our free and reduced kids, but also for kids that are eating just normal in our line. So we report all 100% of our participation in our K-6 program, and we receive a small, again, in the cents for those kiddos, but in the 21-22 school year, those kids will absolutely eat free. We won't charge them a dime.
So that's a one-time,
1
1
year.
year program?
1 year.
And it doesn't come with any dietary restrictions or?
Well, the programs already has the dietary restrictions.
Yeah.
And so as long as we continue to follow those dietary restrictions in our K-6 program, then we'll qualify.
Okay.
And so if we do this for a year, they won't make us do that next year and the next year and next year like they're doing with some of the ESSER funds. Okay.
It's a 1-year program
Yeah,
and
that's what that's.
that we can
maintenance
pass
of-
on.
What's that called again? Maintenance of estimate.
So if you count that in, and I said a trip in the bus is about $2 a day, and I'm not suggesting that we're going to give free lunches if you ride the bus or anything to that nature. But
Crossed your mind.
there are some opportunities there that at one end we're asking for a fee, and on another end we'll be able to feed more kids that want to participate at no cost. Now, the a la carte sales will still continue. So like a bottle of water or an extra milk or whatever the case may be, kids will still have that same opportunity just like they have today in our lunch. I know I digress from transportation a little bit, but I thought the $2.50 for our elementary age kiddos and that being free is a benefit, and especially when we're talking about charging a potential K-4, K-6 student $350 a year, which comes out to about $2 a day for transportation. And so the fee per campus, that shuttle fee, I talked about how we are shuttling primarily from Sloan Creek to the 2 elementary schools, and then we have some that ride from Willow over to the high school. We're recommending about a 60% of the total fee. So it's about a 40% discount, if you will. So 60% of the total fee. So if the board were to choose the $350, then this table here would be an example of what that fee would look like, about $24 per month to ride the shuttle bus between campuses. If you set that at $400, then we would ask you to make the campus-to-campus shuttle around 60% of the $400. amount, for example. Or if you chose to charge 300, make it 60% of the 300. And then the AM PM, again, that's still home to school service, whether it's from the home in or from the school out to the home. Not quite as big of a discount there. So that's at 20%. So the fee structure from the 350 to the 80% or 20% off for the just one time a day, whether, and primarily we know it's going to be the afternoon because that's where the majority of our riders are. And then looking at a 40% reduction for just the shuttle service between our campuses. And then from the question that we had and really going back to the number of actual riders that the survey yielded with the number of riders, the majority of our families or the majority of our riders come from a rider family. And so I think it would be reasonable to set a cap at that 2 rider level. So it's about $700 if you adopt the 350 fee. And so that's what's indicated there on the bottom. Now, that 700 would still be the cap. So if you did, let's say 3 students doing shuttle only, then they're not going to hit that cap at doing that. But if you did 3 students at the 350 to have the option of riding in the morning and the afternoon, then you hit that cap with 2 students and really the third student.
700, not necessarily 2.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so when we ran the numbers on that, again, to Ms. Adams' point earlier about, well, how much revenue will this generate based on the survey participants, if we use that data and with knowing that not 100% of those that completed the survey will actually participate in the ride. Utilizing that data, and knowing that we've got 75,000 from current year that we need to make sure this fee covers, as well as a new 150, so a total of 225,000. This fee should bring in just over 300,000 at this structure that I have up on the screen with the number of riders, approximately the number of riders that completed the survey. It could potentially increase some drivers if we're trying to do full coverage. I actually broke out the numbers by planning unit. And so we can see where our hot spots are, and it's where some of it's interesting. I should have provided that here it's not always where you think it would be, where the higher ridership would come from. But the current year, we have about 20% of our riders that are either on a reduced fee or a waived fee for financial hardships. So if you take the approximately 300,000 and back out about 60,000, about 20%, that puts us just slightly over the 225 threshold that we're shooting for. It comes out to about 240,000-ish. And so we feel like this particular fee with that structure will generate the number that we need and still allow for some hardships for families that need it.
So we talk about revenue, we're just talking about eating into our costs.
That's right.
Right. I mean, we're not making money above cost. I mean, it costs about $650,000. Okay.
Yeah, this will just help offset the expense of providing the service. In fact, when we utilize the numbers, if you charged, if every 1,176 without a family cap, and you try to get about 1,000 of those kids to actually ride every day at the full amount, then you could lower that a little bit. But again, around $200 or so per rider to make up that delta. But the likelihood of all 1,176 riding is probably slim. I would say that it's probably going to be closer to about that 800-900 range when we finally ask folks to lock in.
And so the fee proposal now, if the numbers work out the way you've been talking about, that would only cover a third of the total cost?
Yes, sir.
What would the fee have to be to cover
Yeah,
cost?
that's,
Sorry, Jeff.
Oh, there it is. Let me calculate that.
Yeah. If it's a third, it'd be close to about $1,100. So we're supplementing the ride by $700 a kid, generally speaking.
Yeah, if we had 1,000 riders, then just the quick math, 1,000 and the 650,000 that we're spending for regular education is about 650 a kid, and that's without a family max.
Okay.
Yeah, and assumes no additional expenses on top of that. Now, if you want to consider a slightly higher fee to help offset some of the security costs, then that could be an option as well. If we wanted to look at going to 375 or 400, that could help offset some of the costs there instead of, for example, not suggesting that it pay for security, but the 650 that the district is paying for transportation, if we utilize more or not subsidize it as heavy and take those funds and put it into security, could be another opportunity there to consider from the board as a fee.
What are we projecting our ridership at?
So if you want to use what I think is probably a good number, probably around 900 kids, I would say.
So if we need to make up roughly between a security officer and potentially a clerical person to support collecting all these fees and all this stuff, that number would be in the 120 range. So what would that fee be per rider?
So in the 225 that we need to hit for transportation. So that's about 335 total, right? Divided by about 900 riders, be 372.
We need to be around 375 on that.
Yeah,
top tier.
but that's without a cap to our waivers and hardships.
Yeah, I just wanted to deliberate through that a little bit and give you guys some feedback as well.
Yeah.
So we also had discussed potential for extracurricular fees to help with security.
Yes, sir. And
So I think, you know, as a baseline, I guess, the way I think about things, as a baseline, we're going to need to move forward with, this is my words, at least a basic structure as we've proposed, potentially to help offset as we deliberate forward data for the next meeting to consider this additional security officer we're wanting to pursue. We may have to consider either an extracurricular fee or maybe a slight adjustment to this fee table to allow for that to occur.
yes, sir.
Doesn't mention the fact that we truly need to put funds into our fund balance beyond this. So, but given that we're only 51 kids from a balanced budget based on this proposal, we still could allow that to true up between now and June 14th, or even the start of the school year.
Right.
So I guess my other question is, we could come back and amend this prior to the beginning of the year to the extent we needed to, if that true up wasn't as tight as we would like it to be for additional kids. So some flexibility around these decisions.
Mhm. So, Ms. Adams, you wanted to?
You talking about a budget amendment? Like
I'm talking about as a baseline, based on the budget we proposed, assuming this, that we could consider approving this, but under the understanding that we'd like to get some more data that we are deliberating here to talk about next meeting, and also that allows for more applications to come in.
Right.
All this is based on hypotheticals of attendance, ridership, people, transfers coming in, and all that has to happen. So we may get more than we need. We don't have to change anything.
Right.
Optimistically speaking.
Right.
And we may get less and we need to change some things.
And our preference, of course, as administration, and what we have not had the benefit of in the past is if the board is willing to willing to approve the structure, at least at a minimum, so that we can have people begin to enroll and actually know what those true numbers are instead of those theoretical numbers, so that we can route it and know how many people need waivers, how many people need family caps, so we can give you more accurate information rather than continuing to wait on that. But you mentioned, and I failed to update you a little earlier, or I've tried to update you each time on what our current year, because with fund balance is so critical, and I kind of started down that road earlier and then made a turn before I should have. And so I refresh those numbers a couple of times a week, actually, at this point in the fiscal year. And it's frustrating, I know, to many that we have such a wide range of estimate for that, but I've shared with you before where we were from the beginning of when I shared that with you in the fall, that I thought we would take about 3.1 million from fund balance this year. And I've tried to refresh that as we went along. Last month, I told you it was on average, if we use the same expenditure level for May and June as we have for the last non-COVID years, that it was looking like that would be around 2.7, but we still had $880,000 encumbered. So our budget assistants are amazing. There's about 26 of them, and they know their budgets intimately, and that's the benefit of having the budget structured in the way that we do. It's just very unique to our district. So I met with them. Dee Dee actually held a meeting with them, and I went in and asked them, can you guys go in? We really need to nail this. So can you guys go in and clean up your encumbrances? If you know you're not going to use it, go ahead and remove it. So we have our encumbrances down to 400,000 now, which is a much better, more manageable number. And if I use the estimates that I use with the template, and assuming that we accomplish the attendance that we need to have the hold harmless, and that we are awarded the hold harmless from TEA. So all that given and understood with where we are today on local revenue, federal revenue, and running test database on our payroll. All those caveats, we would draw 2.2 million from our fund balance, which is a much more comfortable number. However, I always have to give you the other side. Good news first. And I'm really comfortable with those numbers and know where each one of them are, even though there's many pages of them. But TEA, the Texas Education Agency, our governing body, issued a new summary of finance, and they don't know as intimately what's happening in our districts as we do, and that's why we run our own numbers, and it's live data, and we have to estimate this June for what it will look like next year when we finish the year, next June. But with the information they do have and what they issued, they updated on May 18th, so it's really new, fresh information too. So the variation in their estimate of revenue for us versus ours, but using all of the same expenditure levels and then adding our local revenue and federal revenue, we would draw $3,081,000. That
So close to that 3.1.
Yeah, it's almost that 3.1, because remember that we're going to have programs that are self-sufficient in almost every year that cannot be self-sufficient this year. He gave a shout out to Matt earlier, and he does an incredible job managing our food services, but it's been a rough 2 years for that program. And if you'll remember, for 1920, both that and our daycare program should have had, or they did have deficits, but they had sufficient fund balances to cover their deficits. They will not have that for the current year because of the limitations on participation, but yet expenditures that they have controlled as much as possible, but not. So those have to come out of the general fund as a transfer. So I just wanted to share that with you, as context as well. We're still in that 2.2 to 3.1 million. I feel more confident about the 2.2 because we know more about what's happening in our district than TEA does. But there is a lot of uncertainty still around the hold harmless calculations. There's some legislation included around the hold harmless pieces and what power the commissioner has to make adjustments for us.
Where are we on the attendance for hold harmless? Are we doing okay on that?
Yes, ma'am. We're holding pretty flat around the 67% that I reported last time, with our high school kiddos not participating as often or frequently, which is not abnormal for that group.
But not helpful to our
Not helpful to the numbers.
to our numbers.
What's the number we have to hit?
Over 60%. So yeah, we're good, but not as as
Yeah.
good as I'd like to be.
We're ready to have final numbers in that category. So anyway, I apologize I didn't give you that update earlier. Just wanted to add that for context. And then certainly, I know you are starting to talk some about potential other fees, and we've got some numbers for those if you'd like first.
So my question on the extracurricular fee is at our current enrollment in extracurriculars. I guess if that fee were to be 100 per kid, maybe a cap of 200 per household, what kind of revenue would that add to the bottom line?
Well, of course, you asked me in a way I didn't calculate it. So let me share it with the way I
Well, give it
did
to me how you
calculate
calculated it then.
it. So I have used all along when I have given you any type of estimate, our participation rates from when we actually did implement an extracurricular fee. And then Dr. Womack actually updated those with some information that Coach Ross and others have. And so I used the structure that was adopted before, which was $150 for 7th grade, $250 for 8th grade, and $350 for the high school. Applying our current participation numbers with that structure would yield $604,000. I did not hear from the board yet that you would have any will to do those type of numbers. And so I just kind of took a swing at it. And if I use $100 for 7th grade, $150 for 8th grade, and a $200 for the high school, we would yield $352,000. So if that just kind of gives you a picture, and we can work more on that with some specifics if you would like, directly with a certain amount of, if you want it to be a flat fee across the board. I know the board's will had been before that, of course, we're talking about a $350 fee at the high school, but the board's will had really been to make sure that we didn't prohibit 7th graders from trying different things. And so they had really drastically reduced the 7th grade participation. And that's where our highest participation is. So that really adjusts our, the revenue that we see from that, because that's where we want them to explore and try all of those things. So different year, different picture, but I just wanted to kind of give you both of those swings. And if you would like for us to.
Can I
try
clarify? You said
You bet.
100 at 7th, 150 at 8th, and 200 for 9 through 12
Yes.
equaled 350,000 roughly, and that was with no family cap?
Right. Yeah, those are just straight numbers. So if you would like for us to incorporate family caps, or if you want us to do more flat numbers, just let us know. We can have those for you on the 14th.
Shay, can you remind me what a teacher raise? So the teacher raise we gave, what was the total on that?
So a 3% teacher raise is typically in the $650,000 to $700,000 range. Step only for our teachers is about $150,000, and that's generally about 0.5%. It's a very, very low number. And I can confirm those calculations and send them out to the board.
So obviously our desire would be to charge no fee for extracurriculars. Ultimately, we want as many kids trying as many things as possible. And I still am of the mindset that we want to try and protect that idea.
Right.
But at the same time, I would love to see us vet that through our discussions. This is my own perspective. In our next board meeting, I'm more of a preference of a flat fee.
Okay.
And a cap per household, $100, 200 total. Really would be more aligned with helping it achieve our goals with security, safety.
And would that be 7-12? Would that be 7th through 12th or 8th through 12th?
I'd say 8 personally. 7th, I'd prefer those kids that's their first opportunity to be exposed to things, and it'd be nice to not have something applied to that. This is just me thinking out loud. So just as a proposal to show us some data, I would love to see something like that. But my full intent would be to hopefully see things transpire so that we did not have to do that. The fee to ride seems, and again, probably the people paying it don't feel this way, but $2 a day, I mean, that versus no fee, it's obviously not exciting, but at $2 to $3 a day to ride the bus, that seems very reasonable. And given the amount of cost we incur to provide that service, I personally would probably be looking there first. And I'm sure the bus people don't want to hear that, but just being transparent of my thinking, I would probably be looking there first. But
Well, certainly with 3 weeks to go and you've seen the numbers grow, as I've presented those to you because we've had the opportunity to meet pretty often, we'll be able to provide you with updated enrollment numbers, which will adjust the revenue. We'll be able to provide you, if you pass tonight, the transportation item, we'll have some more definite numbers on that. We can run the numbers based on our best information of family caps for extracurricular. And then we've still had donations coming in from generosity of our parents and our Lovejoy Scholar parents. And so we'll be able to provide you all of those numbers, and we'll definitely incorporate the 6 security personnel into the budget side of them.
So, go ahead. And we saw, you've updated us on increased enrollment numbers and donations just from May 7th. So in 3 weeks, we saw significant gains in those areas. In
Yes.
3 more weeks, which is where we are
Right.
from tonight, might as well.
Right.
Did we ever do surveys previously regarding the extracurricular fees?
No, I don't recall that we did survey that. It's been about 4 or 5 years where we go back to 16, 17 or 17, 18 to find the information what had been passed. And so I'm not sure how.
2017, because it was my first board meeting.
Okay, yeah. I know 17 was either
I
the beginning or the end
remember
of it.
very clearly.
And so I'm not sure how applicable the information would be, but I don't recall us doing surveys. We can go back.
I just
and
think
look at that.
sometimes good ideas come out from
Mhm.
public comment when we do that. And I don't know if that could help in this process as we vet some of Barrett's ideas versus the other things we've explored in the past, but it might be beneficial to look at that.
I will say, I've heard from a few people, just as this has started to surface again, that there's concern it will take away from generosity and donation to booster clubs.
Mhm.
And we are putting a lot of pressure on those groups
Right.
to fund things because of the other things, that the
Right.
district can't pay for.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, athletics is
so-
taking the same cuts as their others.
Right, so we kind of need to be thoughtful
And
about that
finance.
too, because if we're charging a fee and then somebody doesn't want to give to the booster and that's paying for the helmet or whatever it is, right? It's just more to consider, but I do like your thought, Jason, of maybe polling, and I don't think we need to do something on the fee tonight. I like the idea of doing something on the busing so we get real numbers and we know kind of more where we are, because I remember when the bus was free and my kids were little, they would only ride in the afternoon, especially at Sloan Creek, because I was terrified to have to get in that line, So it might be good to kind of see people put their money where their mouth is. That's my take on the transportation thing tonight.
I agree with what's been said so far. The more time we can take to review more options, the more we can encourage community comment and ideas. I think that's something that we should do. I had one question about the legislative update. I know we're looking at a hit to fund balance in the 2.2 to 3.81 range. There was something in the amendments about basically us finally getting some
relief.
COVID expenditure relief. And so I
Yes.
think you had a dollar or something per student. And
It's
you-
about $208 per student and
Alright.
then some technology reimbursement. And that's the other thing, that by June 14th, they will have adjourned and we will know what numbers those are, that is intended for relief, for refunding
Right.
fund
But they
balance.
could also go into special session,
But
which wouldn't be till
yes,
October.
There is an expected special session in the fall. And so that is what the fall session, at least all I can tell you is what has been shared with me through staff. And that has been around the redistricting and the ESSER 2 money, which we might have
Okay.
a little shot at getting. Both of these are amendments to the current bill.
So our fund balance situation for 2021 could improve even
Yes.
further than what,
And we could know that by June 14th.
I'd be surprised, but that'd be great.
Me too, pleasantly, if so.
Well, we did get free lunch today.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jeff's going to go to elementary.
Yeah. I'll volunteer. Something.
Just a quick comment, I'm going to ask either one of you made a comment. So as we're talking about fees, transportation, extracurricular, there may be on our audience, maybe asking, they've heard us talk a lot about security also, why can't we implement a security fee? We know
Right.
that we're by law not allowed to implement a security specific fee. So maybe if you could touch on that, just so if somebody hasn't heard that before, we can
Yes.
make sure that that's clear.
So in Texas, we we have to provide a free and appropriate education to the citizens that live within your boundary. And so anything that's an optional, like transportation's optional, parents don't have to do it. You're not required to provide bus transportation as a board, except to those that have an individual education plan that require it. And extracurricular are optional. The students do not have to participate. It's not required for graduation. We do not have to provide any extracurriculars as a school district. And so anything that's optional, you have the ability to charge a fee on because it does not impact a student's ability to receive a free and appropriate education. Anything that interferes with that, it would not be free anymore. So for example, if you charge a flat security fee to all families and required it, A, you wouldn't have the authority to require it, and B, it would no longer become a free and appropriate education for kids. And so that's where the line in the sand is drawn. So you could not charge a fee for, let's say, English instruction at all of our campuses because that's not part of the opportunity to provide a free and appropriate education. Does that help explain?
Yeah, I want to just make sure our community
Yes, sir.
understood that in case this was the first time they're hearing anything about trying to allocate funds towards security.
Yes, great question.
So with all of that being said, if we need a motion if we want to consider this transportation fee schedule with the understanding that we want to reevaluate this and allow some true up time with other things to transpire with enrollment, things like that, and also to evaluate this additional security officer.
Absolutely.
So we would need a motion if you all are in agreement with that direction.
Motion to adopt a basic transportation fee structure so that we can get better idea of actual numbers of riders, but be willing to amend, supplement that later date, and then as far as extracurricular fees, hold off.
Yeah, I think for public information, it's just to understand that we can amend it at any time, but to adopt a transportation fee structure, that would be the motion.
But not an extracurricular.
And we're not making any movement on an extracurricular fee.
All right.
So I'll move to adopt the transportation fees as presented by Dr. Womack.
A motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Chad Collins, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Dr. Womack.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shay. All right. Our next item on the agenda is around school start times. And I would suggest that we table this action item and put a little bit more time and thought through that process and
Absolutely.
possibly bring that back to on the agenda next time.
That's right. Let me give you just a little brief understanding of why we even want to consider something like that. And really it comes down to the efficiency of our routes. So right now, the time of our two-tier system, so when our latest tier 1 students get out, because it's primarily for the afternoon, it's not really help for us in the morning because we have such low ridership in the morning times. It's really the afternoon. And so if our elementaries get out at 3:10 and Willow Springs gets out at 4, that only leaves a 50-minute opportunity. And so if you think about that we typically will roll into an elementary school with our buses, pick up students, we're really not getting off of that campus for about 5 to 7 minutes. So that eats into that 50 minutes. Now we're down to about 43 minutes, right? And so and then we need to be at Willow Springs slightly before the bell rings so that the buses are positioned and we don't have kids running in front of the buses and all of that. So really it narrows it down to just about 38 to 40 minutes of actual route time. And so if we want to maximize, and it really wouldn't overextend us, but we average about 30 kids per bus right now. And these are 77 passenger buses, and we're averaging around 30. If we want to get that number up to around 50 or 60, which the buses can obviously handle, then we need a little bit more time for routes in order for us to pick up more kids, to extend the route. So right now, if we're doing a route that's about, as I was saying earlier, about 35 to 40 minutes, but we're able then to make it about 45 to 50 minutes, then that would allow us to pick up that many more kids on those routes and really utilize our services a little bit better, our buses. And you can do that without adding expense. So we're not increasing the number of routes. We're actually utilizing the routes that are already there and putting a few more kids on the bus and giving them the opportunity to ride. The reason why that gap between there has shrunk is a few years ago, the community wanted us to reduce the number of instructional days so that we had more holidays throughout the school year. So it really comes back to a calendar issue. And to do that, when the state moved to school districts being required to go to school 75,600 minutes per year versus the number of days, would it increase our number of minutes? We added 5 minutes on to the end of school. We used to get out at elementary at 3:05. Now we get out at 3:10. And when we did that, we didn't make that adjustment. We basically narrowed the amount of time that we had to run routes. And so that's the reason why we were even looking at or considering an opportunity to widen that gap between Tier 1 and Tier 2 runs, is to allow for more kids or for more families to receive services, if at all possible. So the moving the Willow Springs and the high school up is another option. I know that some of our families have commented on that, at least in email to me. And that is an option, but they already get out at 4 and 4:15. And so moving it to 4:10 and 4:25, our students on extracurricular that we were just talking about already have some difficulty because they're constantly being pulled out of their 8th period class to depart the campus to go to their extracurricular trips, whether we're talking fine arts or athletics. And those are typically 7th through 12th grade students. And so moving it even further out in the afternoon is one of the limiters that we were trying not to do. We weren't trying to take anything out on our elementary or Sloan Creek kiddos at all. Really, it's about the gap between the two and how we can get more kids serviced. Yeah.
And part of analyzing this is, at what point do you learn the start time for the route? So if a parent could know, because
Sure.
this moved 10 minutes, what is my actual pickup time? If we had, how long does it take you to figure that part out?
So that's the chicken or the egg conversation. So if you know the number of riders and where those riders live, then you can develop a route and know what the start time is. Or you can back into it, which is the chicken part of if we're not willing to start anything, let's say earlier than 6:30, and that, so then how can we back into a route and know that we've got that starting point as our floor, our starting floor. So we could work it either way. It's in the past, we've always done it with how many actual riders do we have, and then put in our resource towards that general area based on where they live and want to ride. But you're right, it will move that needle a little bit, about 10 minutes. But again, it's more on the afternoon where the majority of our riders are. We're not trying to punish those kiddos to get up 10 minutes earlier. That's not the intent.
So my preference would be that we table this.
Yes, sir.
for action, but we would need a motion to do so. Move to table school start time and stop times proposal.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that explanation. So, Dr. Womack, you're up with your superintendent's report and our elementary transition.
Yeah.
they were hiding out behind me. I asked Miss Wendy Kraft, the principal of Hart Elementary, and Holly Haynes, the principal of Custer Elementary, to come and give you a quick update. They gave you an update 2 weeks ago, so not a lot has changed in 2 weeks, but nonetheless, I want to keep you informed and aware of what's happening with the transition.
Good evening. So we're excited to give you a quick update on our transition plan. So my name is Wendy Kraft, and I will be the principal at Hart Elementary. And so Ms. Haynes and I have been working really collaboratively and working really hard. So we're excited. We have already sent out a save the date for our Parents Night In to all of our parents for Thursday, July 29th. So that is an event we talked about where parents will come and students will come. And so over the summer to get to know their classmates and some teachers, that's just one time. We've also held meetings with any parent from Lovejoy Elementary who's been in the special education program who requested to meet with Ms. Haynes, myself, and Ms. Fuller. And so we had some great conversations with our parents and really talked about their concerns and really answered questions or put some things on our radar that we needed to make sure we took care of. Our staffs had meet and greets last week, and it was a great opportunity for them to come together and have just great conversations. It was great. I was so excited to see the smiles, and the best thing is at the very end, a couple of our staff members was like, thank you for being so incredibly welcoming. So I know it really put the Lovejoy Elementary teachers at peace. So that was also exciting. We are busy packing. We are packing. There are boxes everywhere, whether you're at Hart, Lovejoy, or Custer. Boxes are being packed and teachers are working really hard to make sure they're getting ready for the big move. Something that we kind of decided about that we really didn't talk to you about last time is that we really decided we're really going strong with We're All Leopards. And so we really thought it would be really important for us to kind of have the same leopard as our logo and just wear different shirts. So we decided to put it out to the community, and our students got to pick who our new leopard is. And so our new leopard is going to be Meet LJ. That will be the new leopard face that will be on all of our stuff. And one will have a shirt with a big P on it, and then the other will have a shirt with an H on it. So we're excited about that. And so our students will find this out on Thursday for their event where they go to the different elementary schools.
Good evening. I'm Holly Haynes, the principal at Custer Elementary, and the event that is most forthcoming is this Thursday. We have created an opportunity for our Lovejoy staff and students to visit their new home campuses for next school year. So students will travel to their new school. We do have a few parents who have put in transfer requests once the boundary lines were drawn and determined. And so those will be shared with them tomorrow, whether those transfer requests have been approved so that children know where they're going for certain before Thursday.
So Ms. Haynes?
Yes.
Just real quick on that. We had 34 families request transfer requests from their being zoned from Custer to Hart and Hart to Custer total, and all 34 of them will be approved tomorrow.
So we will know tonight where they will be going. That's awesome. Thank you, Dr. Womack. At that event, we fine-tune the details. It's just an hour on each campus. It's just a big toe dipped in the water, so to speak, just to get a taste of what's to come. But we fit a lot into that hour. So students will be welcomed by Custer students at Custer and by Hart students at Hart. There will be an opportunity for them to learn the school song at each campus. In turn, at Custer, we want the Lovejoy students to teach us their daily pledge that they've been doing so that we can begin to incorporate that. We're going to call it the Leopard Pledge and do it at both campuses. So that's another way that we're unifying the two campuses. There will be an opportunity for the kids to tour the building. We'll have some student ambassadors lead them on some small group tours around the building. And then we have already begun the banner at the bottom. Those are our Pester Kids handprints that have already been put on the banner. We'll be adding our Lovejoy students' handprints to that same banner. Just a cool unifying piece of artwork by each grade level that we can have on display that very first day of school. And yeah, so that's our first dip into the water. And then we do have those other events that Wendy mentioned previously.
So if a board member wanted to come on Thursday?
We would love for you to join us. It will be organized, beautiful chaos.
Yes, it will, for sure. Do you all have any questions?
What time is that on Thursday?
The students will arrive at Hart and at Pester at 9:45.
Awesome. Thank y'all. That's
Great job.
such great news.
Great job.
Thank you.
And you already mentioned it earlier with the track stars, but we do have baseball and softball still going, even though school's about to end, which is a blessing. And interestingly, we are playing Hallsville, both on softball and in baseball. And we're playing at the same site on Wednesday, White House. So I know we've had a really good crowd attend those and want to continue that, even though we are in our final week and kids are especially at the secondary level, preparing for their final exams starting tomorrow and moving through Friday. So Friday is an early release day. And then Saturday is graduation at the Allen Event Center. Saturday, as a reminder, is also the day that the board set for mask as optional at all outside and indoor events. And so we'll adhere to that for the graduation ceremonies as well. And then following graduation at the Allen Event Center, we'll do our staff recognitions and retirements, just like we used to. Have a barbecue luncheon following graduation with our staff. We'll just do that at the Allen Event Center and hope the board can stick around and participate in that with our staff. And then once we win on Wednesday, then we'll be right back at it again on Thursday, but to our speaker, it's going to be at Rockwall on Thursday. So White House on Wednesday, Rockwall on Thursday. And we won't need a Saturday game, I don't think. Now, if that gets on their bulletin board, I'm sorry.
So the girls are in the regional finals. So they win this one, they go to state. And the boys are in the regional semifinals. And so it's been a great year. And those coaches have done an amazing job. The entire staff and the program being supported by the community and all those around them. And it's just been fun to watch. So thank you for all of that. Yes. Wanted to just ask our community to consider coming back to our board meeting next time. We're going to have most everybody knows Mr. Puckett is going to be retiring, and we're going to celebrate him appropriately at this next meeting. So please come out and see us. He asked me not to do that, but I said, we got to do that, buddy. So he'll probably give me.
You said, do you want your last paycheck? And he said, yes, sir.
And wanted to just give a message of support to the Poole family, Janet Poole, one of our teachers whose house was struck by lightning. And then Lawson Nitsky, who was involved in a motorcycle accident. He's one of our Willow Springs kids, and just want to lift him up as well. Thankful for the community and the administration and all of our leaders within our schools, our athletic directors, our principals, and everyone for coming out and supporting our announcement tonight. Thankful for everyone staying the course through all of this. We are, our best days are ahead. It's a perfect storm is what I've been calling it. I think that's absolutely true. And we are turning the corner as we speak. And so I'm looking forward to this next school year. We have some creativity stirring that we haven't shared with you yet, but you will hear about. And So we're excited about where we're headed in the future, and I can't say that enough. We are making some, I believe, really tough decisions, but good decisions to ensure that we're being fiscally responsible, that we are putting the district in the best position possible to move forward and succeed, and to take care of things that need to be taken care of. And we are also sympathetic to the changes we're making to those that it affects, but we know that the way forward is bright and good, and we are accomplishing that. Excited about our improvements that we're making to our facilities that are getting underway. So we have a lot of things going on, all those schools winding down. There's much work being done. And so we're grateful for all those that are taking those extra efforts and times to get that done. So, and unless I missed anything, that's all I have, and we'll be adjourned.